Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Bulletproof for BJJ podcast. And today we will be talking about dealing with lower back pain for BJJ. So that's the thing. Back pain is this kind of very broad topic, but when we're talking about jiu-jitsu people who train BJJ, it's very specific. And we're going to dig down into the major problem, what that can cause, how we can deal with it, and then ways for you guys to work around it if you're there and you're suffering with back pain, you've had hard rolls. We've all experienced it, haven't we, Joey?
Yeah, I get it. I get it sort of every now and again, and I can think back. It's always been part of the jits, sort of journey.
Yeah.
I've never had it. Oh no, I did have it for a period where it was like an acute thing where I had to go get some treatment for it. But for the most part, it's like this thing that pops up. It often pops up after training. Sometimes it pops up outside of training.
Yep.
I was talking to you before the show. I was mowing the lawn on the weekend. I think mowing the lawn was okay, but then I was whippersnippering.
Yep.
And that fucked me up. Sometimes when I'm washing dishes at night, like after training, that fucks me up.
And so let's identify that. So when we look at your position outside of jiu-jitsu, and you guys might have felt the same, you've done jiu-jitsu, you've finished rolling, the rolling was great, you go to stand up, you think, back's not comfortable. And then depending on, you may or may not have done some active stretching and mobility work afterwards. If you didn't, shame on you. It can happen.
We tried to help.
Yeah, we did what we could. But then you wake up the next day and you think, oh, my back, my hips, what's going on here? And for you, Joe, you were looking at it relevant to doing some household stuff. But we looked at your position. What is your position there?
Yeah, so my hips flexed.
Yeah.
So, pardon me, that's the kind of the thing that's happening all the time there is when I'm spending time in a hip flexed position. So imagine I'm standing up straight, but then I stick my butt out and I just drive my hips back a little bit.
Lean forward.
Kind of lean forward. That's the position I'm in when I'm at my sink washing dishes. And I might be there for 10, 20 minutes, depending how many dishes I got to wash. The same thing with the whippersnippering, right? Or gardening, typical with people gardening, even if you're bending down, picking up weeds, fucking whatever. You're in this hip flex position for a pretty long period of time.
Yes.
10 minutes, 5 minutes, even 2 minutes sometimes is a long time to be in any one position.
Yeah, to hold it.
Isn't it? And so when I come up out of that position, my hip flexors are still holding on.
Yes.
They're still holding me in flexion, and I go to stand up and they're like, no, we're on.
Yes.
And as jiu-jitsu people, we got such strong hip flexors, right?
Yeah, train that.
Because we spend so much time in a hip flex position in jiu-jitsu. When you're playing guard, you're basically hips are flexed the whole time. And just to flex for people to think about that, if you bend your knee and pull your knee towards your chest, your hip is now in flexion. If you extend your leg and extend through the hip and squeeze your glute, that's extension. Opening up. So think about jiu-jitsu, this knee to the chest position is prevalent all the time. And if you play a lot of guard, which a lot of our listeners do, of course, that's that's what jiu-jitsu is essentially. You become so strong in that.
Yes.
And that's when you get that little bit of pain when you go back into it and you're like, fuck, man, your hip is still in flexion. It's like your body's trying to pull you back to that position all the time.
Yeah. And it becomes a thing that we're not just pulling our knees to our chest like we were just doing leg raises or a core conditioning exercise. We're doing it under load. You got someone sitting on your hooks. You got butterfly hooks. You're trying to lift. Not only are you trying to pull your knees to your chest, you're trying to extend your legs and sweep them, or you're trying to turn upside down and so there's not only is there you contracting your muscles, you also have the load of another human.
Yeah, it's like weighted hip flexion, which is for super high repetition,
and it's extreme.
Yeah,
and then we've got to look at our lives. So even right now, we're sitting down,
hips are flexed,
and so we have talked about this being in the gym. We've got the ability to walk around to do what we like, and that's great for us. But for a lot of you out there, whether you're a courier, so you drive a truck or a van, you're sitting down a lot. You're a knowledge worker, you're on a computer, you're an IT manager, you're sitting down a lot. Even if you are a creative person, you're a designer, even if you have a stand-up desk, you would spend some time seated. whether it's
Pretty much. I mean, even like even tradespeople.
Yes.
You know, like, oh no, like I work a physical job. So, well, you probably crouch down in a position with your hips flexed.
Yes.
Fucking fixing pipes or, you know, I don't know, cutting timber, you know, whatever.
Tiles, yeah.
Yeah, like this hip flex position is so common.
And it's very rare that we spend time in extension, standing up straight and training that. And so just so that we can relate this back to the back pain piece, guys, your hip flexors, the major hip flexor muscle is your psoas muscle. It's not something you can really see, and there's a few other muscles that help us, but it goes from your femur, extends up through your pelvis, and it connects to your lumbar spine. That's where it originates.
That's your lower back.
Your lower back. So if you think this, guys, that you trying to stretch those hip flexors, you're like, oh, I've got back pain. The back isn't necessarily the problem. Now, let
me just, because just to give people like
context.
Like, well, why does the back hurt if my hips are flexed?
Right.
Like, what's the simple explanation? It's like, all right, I get it. I'm fucking flexed all the time, but why is my back sore?
Well, if we think about your spine, guys, when your spine, they talk about neutral spine, but if your spine is just sitting nice and straight, it's not straight per se. Your lumbar spine has a concave. It curves in a little bit. And then as it travels up, it goes further up the spine, it curves the other way. And it kind of follows this shape all the way up to your head.
Like an S shape from the side.
Yeah. And then when it comes up to the head, it curves back again. When we are in flexion, our spine is rounded. And this is not when it's at its strongest. So when you round the spine, structurally, the integrity is not there. Like, it is more vulnerable to being injured. Now, the thing about getting pain, because we have a lot of nerves all around that area, and back pain can be very miscellaneous. Now, look, if you've ever bulged a disc, and I know some of you out there have, I have, but honestly, at the time when I bulged the disc in my back, I wasn't actually even aware of it, because actually that was when I was at my strongest. It was only later down the track when I hadn't been doing as much lifting and I'd been doing a lot more jiu-jitsu, I ended up getting an injury, and I went and got an MRI on my hip, and they said, you know, you got a bulged disc. And I was like, nope. But now I know. And some of you may have had that kind of referred pain down your leg. Like some of us might experience like a sciatica type pain. Now, this can be related to a lot of issues. We don't want to get too far outside of our lane here, guys. But what you should know is, like, unless you have a bulged disc, your back pain is more chronic than acute. It's not something where, like, because the way I bulge
chronic versus acute. Chronic meaning it's like a niggling, ongoing thing, as opposed to someone picked you up, spiked you, and now you got a fucked back because you had this one super intense incident.
Yes.
Right.
It's not the one-off snap, I'm in pain.
Yeah.
It's that chronic long-term thing.
Accumulated kind of damage.
Yes. And so that's the thing. I've had both. I've had the acute pain where I was getting stack pass. So I'm pretty flexible. I'll hang out there. And the guy sprawled on my hips. And it just flexed my back super hard with his weight, my weight. Mate,
I didn't even sprawl that hard. It was like I was like 10% effort.
Don't roll with Joey. I'm just saying, don't roll with Joey. He seems nice. He's not that nice.
How could you? He looked at me like that.
Hey, you shook hands, all right? You're the black belt.
Yeah,
cop it, mate.
That's right.
Anyway,
I got a piece to add to that because with the hip flexion thing, something that happened, and I'm sure people can identify with this. So your hips are flexed, right? We've established that you're kind of locked into this position, but then you try to stand up, and obviously when you stand up, you're trying to stand up straight.
Yep.
When you try and stand up straight, but your hip flexors are still pulling your hip into flexion, what do you move to try and get straight? You move your lower back. So you end up like really overextending through the lower back
to achieve.
So you're in like this bent hip position, but super arched upper back.
Yeah.
And that's like your lower back is in extreme extension. And so those spinal extensors are like almost cramping.
Yeah.
And that is often the back pain you're experiencing. It's not, you don't, and again, this is general. This is for people who don't actually have a bulging disc or something like that. But this is for 95% of you guys. Your like discs are not like rubbing on each other. It's not catastrophic. You're just really experiencing extreme tightness and like a cramp feeling through the muscles of the lower back.
Yes.
And the tricky part about that is that you think, I got to do something for I got to stretch my lower back. But it's like, no, actually you got to stretch the front of your hip.
Yes.
Right. And we'll go into this in a sec, but it's like once you unlock that, now your hip can open and now your lower back can go into a neutral position and you're good.
Yeah, well, I think the analogy, I can't remember where I got this from. I'll just say that I say it. I won't attribute it to anyone because I can't remember. The hip flexor is the handbrake of the hip. So if you're trying to create extension, you need your glutes. Your glutes are the accelerator. So if you got the handbrake on, it doesn't matter how much you try and rev the accelerator, you're not going anywhere. You've got to take the handbrake off for you to be able to move forward. So for your hips to actually go into extension, you've actually got to try and get those hip flexors to relax a bit, just enough for you to be able to tuck those hips under. And that's where our kneeling wall stretch is a great one. This is the guard player killer.
That's like fucking going about all the time. That stretch, if you guys only take one thing from all this shit that we're saying, is just do that stretch every day. Do that stretch. Yeah. Any kind of wall lunge stretch where you're getting the hip flexors. Like there's not a day that goes by where I don't do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Every day.
And and particularly with my knee rehab.
Yes.
Like it's just even further compounded. I'm like, that stretch, like I'm a different person after doing that stretch every day. Mechanically, yes. I'm like, fuck. Man, I can squat now, or I can move better now. I can stand up straight.
Makes a huge difference, definitely. And here's the offside of that, guys, is because we spend so much time flex, this is kind of part two of this discussion, is jiu-jitsu players generally have crap glutes.
Weak.
Watery
glutes.
Yeah, God.
Like skin pillows.
Yeah, just pancake,
and
flat.
No one wants to put their hand on that.
No ass.
No one wants to fucking sit on that.
Mate, you ain't getting Instagram followers with no booty.
Bruh.
Come.
This day and age.
Get real.
I mean, if you've ever taken a photo in South America where you turn to the side to accentuate the glute, but then rotate the
little leg lift.
Yeah, it's like you're not taking those photos, bruh.
Nah. That's right. You gotta work that bunda, that peach life. The reason why, guys, if we look at power production in the body, think of say an Olympic sprinter. They got the booty. And what's interesting is when we look at other grapplers like judokas and wrestlers, these guys tend to have quads. They tend to have glutes.
They got lower body.
They got lower body. They got that lower body game. Why? Because they're on their feet. They need posture. They got to be upright. These guys really are our cousins within the grappling world.
That's right.
And there's plenty of really good, like the top level jiu-jitsu practitioners do judo and do wrestling and then apply it.
And do some weightlifting as well.
That's right.
You know, they round out their physical development.
That's right. So if you're spending so much time in flexion, and I've said this before and I'll say it again in case you didn't hear it when I said it the first time, the best way to counter volume, which is a lot of something, like just like a lot of time spent doing something, is with load. So you have to make the opposing muscles stronger. What does that mean? You got to get in the gym and you got to strengthen up that ass.
Yeah, you got to do some work around the hips and the glutes. And this is like, I mean, this is human physical development 101.
Yes.
Like there's no good strength conditioning coach out there or program that's not addressing like glute and posterior chain and lower back and hamstring development. Because like JT said, it really is the centerpiece of athleticism. In jiu-jitsu, we can just bypass the need for that athleticism by pulling guard.
Yes.
And there's a whole different world of athleticism that has evolved out of lying on your back and using your legs like arms, and that's fucking awesome. But the thing is that like for most of us, you're not trying to be world champ. So you do spend more time on your feet in this world than you do on your back in the gym.
Yes.
Like it's like jiu-jitsu is a thing, get good at that, but also try to be strong and healthy and robust.
Yeah.
So that you can fucking do other things. And even, I mean, JT and I, we both obviously spend a bit of time doing all this stuff. Man, having that athleticism benefits your jiu-jitsu.
It's an advantage. Like right? I say this all the time because it's kind of funny, guys. Oftentimes when I'm talking to someone who does jiu-jitsu, who doesn't lift or doesn't do any other kind of work to assist their training, it's almost like the old kind of 1960s boxing, like, oh, weight training, that's like cheating. It's like, well, no, it's science. It'll help you. If I could make you the strongest person your size, like unequivocally any man or woman your size, you knew you were the strongest person in the world, would that not be an advantage? Of course, because it's a choice. When you're much stronger than somebody, you don't have to roll them full speed. You're stronger than them rolling them at 50%. You know, it's like when you fight toddlers, you know,
I fucking bash those guys.
Yeah, man. I mean, they've got no strength.
Yeah. You just kid's technique is shit.
Hold them by the head, knee ride them. It's so easy.
I like to practice my judo on those guys.
Yeah, foot sweeps.
Because I'm definitely not practicing judo on an adult.
No. Definitely. If they're under 5 years old, foot sweep them to the ground. Uchimata.
But yeah, this is like this is basic stuff, and addressing strength through that region allows you to balance out what's happening at the front. So it's like we said before, do the wall lunge stretch. It's like, yes, lengthen the tissues at the front of the hip and concurrently strengthen the tissues at the back.
Yeah.
And this is how you restore balance.
Yeah. And the thing is, this is the thing, guys. Pain can, if it's not sudden, like it's not a sudden injury and you've suddenly got torn ligaments or anything like that, or a torn labrum, anything like that. If your thing is chronic, this meant you spent too much time doing one thing and not enough time of the other. There's clearly an imbalance. And we have to do something to fix this, because you've got jobs to do, you've got kids to play with or chase or corral, and you also might have a social life, and you need to be able to function, and being in pain all the time sucks. So we're not saying, hey, this is an aesthetics thing, you got to have the booty because it looks good. It's just real simple. It's like, you just don't want to be in pain and be a cripple because you love jiu-jitsu. There's nothing to say you can't have glutes and do birimbolos.
No.
You know what I mean? I don't know if you guys have ever seen Buchecha. He's a thick daddy. He's a big boy. But when I don't know if you guys hearken your brains back to when Buchecha fought Roger Gracie. He birimboloed Roger Gracie. The first time they fought.
Did he?
Yeah, he birimboloed and always took his back. It's like the guy can move, but he's jacked. Just because you build a bit of muscle doesn't mean you lose function. You gain access to new function. And that's what we want for you guys. That's what I would say is my biggest point around all of this. Honestly, it would only take 2 sessions a week for you to not have chronic lower back pain. I'm going to say it right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, if we look at what our 1 session a week, like you only got to do some, 4 or 5 sets of deadlifting stuff and a bit of glute activate. Like that's going to do the trick, and a bit of stretching every other day, right? Like that's really the thing. Is like, 2 days optimal. 1 day is going to get you there.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, this is our whole mantra, right? It's like the minimum effective dose of what you need so that you can perform better and not be in pain and bring your best to jiu-jitsu. Yeah.
And I think the other thing too, this is like the third point, guys, because when we start talking about core strengthening, a lot of people just think abs. And don't get me wrong, you got to have that strong front chain. We do plenty of work around that to get stronger through the front. But there's plenty of people out there doing a lot of the same. They're doing sit-ups. They're doing more flexion off the mat because they're like, oh, I've got to have strong core. But this doesn't address what your core is good for per se, because the muscles between your rib cage and your pelvis, your core, which incorporates the muscles at the back as well, creates movement. It allows you to move your spine, but then under stress, they can also coordinate so your spine does not move, and it protects it. So for those of our weightlifting brethren out there who do lift weights and do have good technique and they understand about bracing, when you are picking up something heavy, you do want to have a certain amount of air in there, and you want to be able to contract those muscles so your spine doesn't move. This is something you don't learn in jiu-jitsu. No one says, right, you've got to brace and in this way protect your spine. It's like, nah, just bend out of it. Just hip escape your way out of any bad position. And oftentimes this is not the answer. And I feel like this is a missing piece within jiu-jitsu, because if you think about this, guys, this is a scenario that can occur in jiu-jitsu. When somebody goes to sweep you or someone goes to take you down, and you have to brace very strongly through your core just to buy yourself that second to be able to pummel or like move your leg out the way, escape, whatever. But there's a moment when you have to brace and contract all your muscles so you don't just get absolutely, pile drive it into the ground at that moment in time. If you haven't practiced bracing, so I learned it from Taekwondo, we'd have chest pads on, like whatever, and you would get kicked in the guts and you have to brace. So you can absorb a degree of pressure, and also so you don't shit yourself, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of central to, you think about, anyone listening can think about, like when you're in jiu-jitsu and you're framing against someone, you're creating like this structure between you and them. And so the frame might be, say, from your shoulder to your hand. Like
Yes.
it might, you might be off your back or something like that. Or the frame could be from your feet, which is standing on the ground, to your hand. Now, through that, like you have your midsection, like you need to be able to brace that effectively to create one structure.
Yes.
If you can't brace that effectively, then maybe the arm is strong and the legs are strong, but there's a break at the midsection, and that's like that little
point.
Yeah, where it's compromised, that's where you'll lose your frame, right? So this bracing that JT's talking about, that is just inherent in good quality strength training, teaches you how to generate that same kind of force and stability when you're on the mats. And it is a really foundational thing to have, because when you got it, you don't have to think about it, right?
No.
Like you just brace.
Yes.
You know how to do it.
But if you haven't had that as part of your kind of physical education, literally, we're not talking high school PE, we're talking like literally within your orientation and understanding of how you use your body. If you don't know how to do that, in the moment, you're going to buckle.
And so to tie that back to maybe where the back pain can come about, if you don't know how to brace by using all of the muscles of your core, right, then chances are you're going to brace with your lower back. Yep. You're going to take all the load in your lower back. And then that means over time, you're going to be accumulating like more imbalance.
Yes.
The lower back's going to become very strong. This happens, but it also becomes extremely tight. And this is where you start to be that person that's like, oh, my lower back's just always cooked.
But then the flip side on that is you might buckle and then have the load of another human on you.
Or it's like getting stacked, like you said.
Yeah, like you've been taken down and you're getting folded, and you now have 80 kilos or 75 kilos jumping on you, and your spine is not protected.
Yeah.
And even though you might not bulge a disc, it might irritate your sacroiliac joint, which is basically where your spine meets your pelvis. And then your lower back is aching for days. And it's one of those things that, like anything, if you guys have ever had a toothache, it's very hard to think. That amount of pain, whether it's been a root canal or whatever the problem is, you've lost a tooth, very hard to think. Same with an earache, because right next to your brain. It is also really hard for you to move around your day-to-day life if you have this residual ache around your spine, because you just use it for everything.
So what are we saying there? We're saying there's like a little sort of triage to addressing this back pain piece, isn't there? We've got stretching of the hip flexors, like getting them mobile, getting length back into the front of the hip.
Yep.
And then we've got strengthening of the glutes and the posterior chain. So glutes, hammies, even like the spinal extensors, the lower back.
Yep.
And then we're talking about building strength through the core.
Being able to work it together.
And not like conventional exercise, like say sit-ups and stuff, where really it's more of a hip flexor exercise.
Yep.
But a lot of isometric things, right? Hollow body holds, even proper deadlifting and all that kind of stuff.
Deadlifting teach you to brace. I mean, there's a lot of strength coaches out there, and maybe you're a really well-informed listener and you're a PT and you already understand a fair bit about lifting mechanics. There's a school of thought which is you don't need to train your abs or your core. You get enough of that through squatting and deadlifting. To a certain point, if you're an everyday person who doesn't do jiu-jitsu, I would say yes, sure. But if you wrestle, if you do judo, if you do jiu-jitsu, there will be times when your spine is under flexion. There's also times when you're sprawling and someone's trying to take you down and you have to go into extreme extension suddenly. If you don't train being strong in these positions, you won't be. And then you're going to suffer potentially. So it's super important that we teach, like once we've kind of re-educated the hip, open the hip flexor, get the glutes working, to teach our core to work to protect our spine. And yes, squatting and deadlifting will help, but there's some other things that we need to do around that if you are a grappler. So like Joe's talking about with the hollow body holds, but also just spending a bit of time being able to breathe and brace, which can only really be done under load. Just trying to do it with no weight on your back or no external limitation, because that's the thing. I love all kinds of strength training, whether it be relative strength for like body weight strength. But when you grapple, you're dealing with another human. So you've got to deal with an external load. If you only do body weight, there will be a piece missing there, because you do have to train exerting force on an external load to control your body and to control it. And so that's where I feel like picking up a heavy barbell will be very helpful to you. That's my piece on that.
Or a heavy kettlebell.
Kettlebell, yeah.
Right? Like doesn't, we like barbell's nice, but doesn't have to be. You can get that load from other objects. Sandbags.
Like me a sandbag.
Other humans.
Yep. True.
Yep.
And
Small dog.
I mean, I went to Greco-Roman last night, Greco-Roman wrestling.
Is that where you got that pink eye?
Pink eye. I got kicked in the eye, bro. It's not an infection.
It's what we all say.
It's a war wound. It's a war wound. You're the worst. Anyway, I don't have a choice in that. When people kick you in the eye with a wrestling boot on, the effects are more dramatic. But all I was going to say with that is the posture in Greco is very upright because you're not shooting for the legs. You've got to come in and control the hips, control the arms.
Because you're not allowed to attack the legs.
You're not allowed to touch the legs at all.
Wow.
And so
it's just upper body throws.
There's a lot of squeeze and you have to keep your posture very upright.
Yeah.
And what I noticed was like just how cooked I was feeling in my glutes and my lower back just from constantly trying to lift a dude and just keeping my posture always up straight. And essentially I think there's a lot of lessons. It's not like this is some weird idea that comes from athletics that we're trying to apply to jiu-jitsu. If we look at our grappling brethren, cousins, wrestlers and judokas, they do strength training. They usually have strong legs and strong lower backs and strong glutes. It is simply because of the new evolution of jiu-jitsu that people play a game which is purely guard-based. There's not that there's anything wrong with that. It's a very successful way to do jiu-jitsu, but it's not the most successful way to be a balanced, strong human.
No.
And that's what we're trying to
do. It is
address.
hyper sport specific.
Yeah.
And we would argue, that it's really, you don't want to go down that path unless you really are trying to be a world champ.
Yeah.
But if you're just someone who uses jiu-jitsu because you enjoy it, you want to get better, you like being fit and strong, you like hanging out at the academy, you like to feel like a bit of a savage, then we're talking to you. Yeah,
and I mean, look, Paulo Meow brothers, great jiu-jitsu. But do I want to look like those guys? Fuck no. I would rather be Jordan Burroughs. I want to be...
all, I bet all of you guys can attest to this. We all secretly watch wrestling highlight videos.
God damn,
you're like,
that was so good.
That athleticism.
God, I wish I was like that.
Yeah, look at these guys. They're jacked.
Let's drill beer and bowling.
I'm going jiu-jitsu. Yeah.
I don't want to do rope climbs.
Guys, crab ride today. Yes, crab ride.
So, look, guys, actually, we don't mind. If we offended any of you, stop listening right now. But really... I feel you on the back pain piece. I've been there myself. And obviously, if you've had a sudden incident and your back is now hurting, get a scan, get it checked out, go and speak to a physiotherapist, get an MRI, understand if you have or have not bulged a disc, right? If you have bulging discs, you've got to take care of that and you've got to address the rehab piece. But if you're like most of us out there and you do a lot of jiu-jitsu and you find that your back tends to ache after jiu-jitsu or the morning after hard rolling, there's every chance that doing these things by opening up your hip flexors, spending some time strengthening your glutes and training your core to brace, that only within a short amount of time, you'll find that you will have less pain and ultimately you won't be suffering that problem long-term.
Obviously, that's what we do in the Bulletproof program.
Yes,
so if you're
indeed.
looking for guidance on that, bulletproof4bjj.com. There's a free trial there, so get on it. On that, I wanted to give you guys a little update on some changes to the program that are coming.
Very cool.
Some super cool stuff. JT and I have been, all we do is try to keep our program going, but then try to evolve it at the same time. So we're like doing the podcast, doing the Instagram, doing the YouTube, but then how do we make this program better? And what we've designed, and it's sort of, it's almost complete. We've designed a new sort of bulletproof, sort of like foundation program, like our keystone program. This is the one. It's got the key movements of strength and mobility that you need. And the idea is that they all get wrapped up into either a 2-day training week or a 3-day training week for those that have 3 days.
More time.
But the sickest thing that we've done is we're building it so that you can evolve each movement in the program as you progress. So it's a self-driven mastery thing. And the beauty of that is that if you're coming in and you're super strong in the upper body, but you got weak glutes, then you're going to have exercises that suit you where you're at. If you're on the other end of the spectrum, maybe you come from a good strength training background, but you got a weak upper body or tight shoulders, then it's going to be relevant to where you're at. And you cruise through at your own pace. The other thing that's super sick, and we're excited about this, is we have a belt system within that. So we've basically categorized our 7 top strength movements and our 6 top mobility movements. And these will be the standards of the Bulletproof program. And what you can see soon is blue, purple, brown, and black levels for each movement. So you can come into this thing and be like, all right, let's see where I'm at, test myself against their standards. Holy shit, man. I'm like a black belt at like pulling strength, but I'm a white belt when it comes to like my hamstring mobility.
Yeah.
So it's a really cool way for you to diagnose where you're at, and then for the program to guide you so that you can really get to at least a colored belt across all standards. Ideally, you'd be like brown or black, but some of these, getting to black on some of these will take a long time.
Yes.
Our goal is that everyone who does the program will get to at least purple.
Purple belt. Yeah.
That's like, if you're a purple belt, you're fucking killing it.
Yeah, which means you've got to be purple belt at all the strength standards and all the mobility standards. So that is actually fairly hard to achieve, guys. We've actually got a guy right now. You may have heard of him, Kieran. First day of testing, he got black belt on pull-up. And it's just like, this guy, he's a Navy guy, super jacked, does pull-ups or heaves, as they call them in the military, all day. Came in and smashed it. All right, let's have a look at your back bend. No chance.
Like white belt status.
No, I would say not even white belt status. His extension is terrible. So that's the thing, guys. You might be really good at something, but what we would love for you in terms of you being a really well-balanced athlete as well as jiu-jitsu person is to have equal measures, strength and mobility. And this is the accountability for that. And it will be very easy to see where you're at, and that's some feedback. So you might be a super athletic white belt in jiu-jitsu, and so you might be a purple belt in Bulletproof for BJJ, but maybe you're a brown belt in jiu-jitsu and you've let it slip a bit. Now you're actually like a white belt, blue belt in Bulletproof. We have given you a method to level yourself up. And if you improve quick, and this was feedback, guys, this is feedback from you, so we do appreciate the feedback, that some people are quicker gainers. They go up. They go really quick. So they want the program to progress with them. And then some people, they take a bit more time, and that's okay. And so we have designed it specifically so for those of you who are improving more in a rapid fashion, you can accelerate. Or if you take a bit more time, that's okay too. The program will suit you as well.
Damn straight. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Catch you next week.